All right, it's been a little while, and I want to take a look at the state of the market. I don't really watch it as much as I was like 24/7 because obviously, as you can see in the charts, we've hit the backside of the move and we're at one, two, three, descending scallops. And can we go lower? We can definitely go lower. And, where would lower be? 17 right now is the local. Starting to go back to where the run actually started was like 9600. There's a gap down there still, and I still could see a shakeout. However, I believe in Wyckoff, I believe in cycles and news and things like that. The Luna debacle was big, and I'm starting to see all the negativity. You got the backdrop of the war and everything else scaring people off, and that kind of takes us back to the end of maybe cycle 4.2, 4.3 in market structure, maybe headed back to 1.1. How low can we go? Well, inflation's crazy. There's midterms. The world, overall is not in a good place. So the macro is pretty shitty. However, I'm starting to see some things getting worked out. So today, VGX is just, running like crazy. And what is VGX? Well, VGX was made by a gentleman who ran light speed trading and was the CEO of E-Trade. And then they made Voyager, and it's a commission-free, crypto-made gain simple thing. When the downturn started over here, everyone started suffering, especially, places that the business model is trading and trading fees. And, in general, like that's their software as a service. Well, when that service is not in demand and they're going down, they're already kind of in a bad position. You can weather the storm if you've got hard cash or big pockets like Binance or FTX. So you add in Luna and everything else needing to be digested. And now that's starting to be digested because if you look at VGX, it's surging on the attractive takeover interest from Binance and FTX. So that means you're starting to digest that out. Like FTX and Binance, they have money. They're sitting on it. What are they buying? Are they buying? They're starting to buy. There's interest. And that interest in Voyager actually brought people off the sidelines. I mean, it's up 140% today. That's pretty impressive for a market that looks like, this, with a potential lot more downside. That means there's still buyers out there if the deal is right, if the opportunity is right. And how do you decide if the deal is right? Well, apparently people have decided the deal is right if FTX and Binance are interested in picking something up. There's other things that are running too, like Stargate. Stargate, is a pretty good project as well. I'll talk about that in something else. But I find it very interesting that something like this is what moved. And I mean, the rest of the market looks really, really, really bad. So I feel like we're in the end of maybe 3.3 to 4.3 in the market cycle. There potentially is a lot more downside because the macro is just so terrible worldwide. Inflation's pretty bad. People aren't really sure what's going on. Housing is starting to sit on the market like it was booming. It was crazy. There's no real reason for it. Just people that had money were buying. BlackRock was buying. They were snatching up property when they were cheap because money was cheap to borrow. Everyone was talking about how terrible houses were. Oh, they're so overpriced, this, that, and the other. But I saw a study done by someone that was really good. And they said, let's look at houses from like 1930s, 1940s. Everyone talks about the golden age of houses when your parents could buy a house for cheap. And they did a comparison where they took minimum wage at the time to minimum wage now. They looked at what a house cost, which obviously if a house in 1940 is, $12,000 and a house today is like $800,000, you're like, oh, 12 to 80, like, oh, so much. Yeah, but minimum wage was like 12 cents, dude. Like you have to, all things even out. You got to get as close as you can. Well, they also looked at the interest rates. So by the time they took the interest rate into consideration, the price of the house, and then extrapolated that out and compared forward, you're actually paying less now for more house. Also, the house at the time, let's say the house, I believe, was like 800 square foot or 1,000 square foot. It wasn't even like the ranch style houses yet. However, the house now is 20 to 40% bigger. So when you actually scale that up to like saying, okay, if you're going to get a 1,500 square foot house now for 800, and you could get an 800 square foot house back then for 12,000, when everything is structured in a way where you can compare them out, you have to either downsize the current house or upsize the last house and then go by the square footage. You're actually getting more for less because the interest rate is so low. That's actually just pumped up where people are like, okay, well, I'm going to be paying this payment of $4,000 either way, which was about the same equivalent back then compared to minimum wage. You're not really losing out. Where you are losing out is the fact that other things do cost more as well. Milk, eggs, goods like that. There's been interest on things other than just real estate. But however, the people that had money sitting on the sidelines, like FTX, like Binance, they are buying select assets. That tells me like there is still more trouble to come. But if people like that have finally seen the asset they want to buy, and they're like, cool, I'm willing to spend my hard money on this, versus saying like, ooh, no, something much better is coming along. We are starting to digest out, the problems that Luna caused, and, the war, all the interest, all the crazy things that are going on. We could be seeing a bottom sometime soon. I think after we finish the next bottom, probably be about the time real elections start. If there is a good feeling towards who gets in next, and they don't just totally, start like the next World War now, we'll see the run of the next golden bull run super cycle that's going to last for a very long time. We're almost at the spot where there's, one more really, really nasty downside push, with a little bit of choppiness in and out as it changes over. But we're starting to get into where everything that had a problem is getting worked out. The lost wages from COVID, they're getting worked out. They're getting digested. All the things that collapsed because of those things that depended on that are getting worked out. All the loans they gave out that they forgave that, are going to be taxes, it's getting kicked down the road. They're going to make bonds. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to smooth the economy out. They're starting to get it smoothed out. And I think that's really important to notice, because once they do, everyone really wants to get back to production, getting to work, getting assets, getting things under control, and moving forward. The moving backwards is almost stopped. So I think in the next maybe 12 to 24 months is like the end of the bottom before it really just takes off and there's just a new era of absolute goldenness for the entire world, because they're starting to loan to countries that, were underdeveloped, because the developed nations, they're developed. They're starting to move migration around. They're moving people that want to work to other places. They're moving people away from governments, don't want to be around those governments, and those governments are coming on board saying, yeah, okay, that's fine, they can go, but we want this concession, we want that. That's going to build infrastructure in those countries, and people are going to want to go back to those countries too, because they won't suck so much anymore. The spreading of wealth around the world is getting better. I mean, you've already passed a point where you've robbed certain nations of their gold and their diamonds and their natural resources, and moved that money elsewhere and built structure and modernization. And people that didn't have those things were like, yo, I want that, I want to go there. Now they've went there, they're earning a living, they're sending money back home, and the World Economic Forum is sending them money as well, so that those areas can expand. I mean, you're really in a position to where things can start to get really good after getting just really bad in the next, 12 to 24 months. Maybe China goes to war with Taiwan. Maybe we have a little bit of skirmishing, which is good too, because that's the next sector. Like, where does money get spent? If you start building tanks, I mean, what really pulled us out of, the Great Depression after World War I? It was World War II, because we spent all kinds of money on war surplus and goods, even though people are like, oh, war is terrible. War makes money, and a lot of money gets fed through a lot of hands. You do lose some people as well. So you also lose, having to pay, out for those people. I mean, it's kind of like ghoulish, but that's really just the way things are. The war actually is good for the economy longer range, even though it costs a lot of money. The money is uptaken and redistributed through trickle down hands. People hate that concept too from Reagan, but the reality is that if, Raytheon, Boeing, everybody else gets a lot of orders for tanks, that goes to those families. Those families go out and buy houses. Those people go out and have money to buy cars. Those people that buy cars, or that made cars, are selling cars, and the factory worker has jobs. And then those people have money to spend locally, and it does trickle down. It's just the way that it is, So looking at cycles the way everything is, the low, I mean, if it really, really, really fell apart, if things went wrong, if there really was a lot world war that really hurt people, I mean, you're talking a total reset down to 4,000, 3,000 area where everything really took off from. We could ledge right here, though. If you see right where we're at, around 17,000 in this zone, 19,000 is the last cycle top. That was that mid-range before we took off again. You could possibly, you could find support at 17. I still think we gap fill at 96, even if it just takes a day or two. I mean, it could slow bleed off forever and forever. If it starts to bleed off forever, then, that's probably more indicative of China's going to go to war with Taiwan and draw a lot of people into an extended combat. But again, if that happens, the money that is flown through manufacturing will take 1 to 2 years to trickle out. But once it does, it's going to stabilize like crazy. And then peace will come and everyone will go, whoa, I got this extra money from, working at the factory. What do I do with it? And then things will take off. It's just a matter of how fast we're going to take off and how fast we're going to bottom and about where we bottom. But we are close to the bottom before we take off. And then, you might see BTC go up to like $500,000, $1 million. That sounded crazy for people to even say it was going to go past, 10,000 when it went to 19. And then when it went to 3, oh, never, it's just done. It's over. And then people that believed it were like, it's going to go up, and went to 60, like, oh, never under 50 again. And like, here we are at 20. That's just cycles. So if you look at the cycle buildup, like the cycle low could come back down to like 3,000 to really test and say, hey, this is like the bottom. This is the bottom that it's ever going to go. It's lined up to the world. The world has money. Macro looks good. Everybody is, on board. We're starting to accept crypto, which is the other thing I want to point out right there. The Voyager debit card, it's 9% rewards. That's insane. I mean, that's really, really good, right? If you also look at the fact that today MasterCard now accepts XRP, Sheep, and some other things at over 90,000 merchants, like it's close. There's a place where like all the crazy people that were in first and bought crypto, all the naysayers like, what are you going to do with it? You're never going to be able to do anything with it. Well, places are starting to accept it. So if you have, money in Voyager exchange and you have their Voyager debit card, you can go out and spend, your crypto. Like that's something that's going to line up with the cycle low as well. And everything's just going to boom at once. All that stuff's going to take off, but we still got a lot of negativity. We're just starting to see assets being purchased and worked out. We're starting to see a move forward, but it's just the very early stages. So I would start to get a line personally, I'm going to continue buying. Dips down into the bags, I'll sell any 100% rallies, obviously, until I feel like, it's totally bottomed. Until then, like I want to sell back to cash and recollect more, base as much as I can as that happens. Everyone can do their own thing, but me personally, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm looking at structure. I never thought it would go as high as, 60. I didn't think it would go that high this time, but I also know that from looking at the structure, like no matter what it did, like it wasn't going to go from there to 1 million. It wasn't going to stay there. It can't. It has to work itself out because the macro is terrible. It has to line up for it to work. So that's just kind of what I'd be thinking about. I'd look for more and more places that have hard cash, big money like Binance or other players in the space that are starting to eat up assets at a discount, and how much that pushes tokens and how much interest there actually is, because it's still out there. It's just not, gangbusters like it was. Everyone was like, I'm buying anything and everything. I don't care if it's a scam. I got to get in the space. People are selective now. And, looking at today's price action on Voyager, you're up 118%, right now, something like that, 110%. It was 138 earlier before it pulled back. It was like 66 cents. I mean, there's money out there, and this isn't small volume. This is a lot of volume went through today. So I'd be keeping that in mind. Thanks for watching.